So we're back again with another episode of the Tethered Nation podcast, as well as the Hunt Appalachia podcast YouTube channel,
Podcasty
whatever
thing.
you want to call it. So we're running a video podcast for Hunt Appalachia, and for Tethered Nation, you're obviously listening through this, whatever apparatus you listen through. Can I say apparatus on the podcast?
I think so. I don't know. You might want to check the book.
So what's up, Grant? I got Grant Lemon here today.
Oh, not much. I'm getting tired. I've been dragging too many deer.
Yeah. He's stacking them up like cordwood over here.
Yeah.
They said there was an EHD outbreak in Harrison County, but
It was just me.
Grant.
No, it's been fun. We've been on the urban hunt here. A little over a week. Able to kill 2 does so far. The EHD thing's a real deal, especially down there. And on that urban hunt, we found 4 so far in the creek that have been dead. You can tell there's not very many deer on those urban parcels now.
That's crazy.
Pretty low.
It's been so dry here. We're actually under a burn ban right now. We can't
I
have
saw
any
that
fires.
this morning.
Yeah. So we haven't had any rain in like a month, so it's super, super dry. And that's probably going to play into my tactics going into our opener.
Yeah.
Probably look for some water, cooler spots, where the deer like to bed. But, yeah, I mean, I've already got a couple trips under my belt. I've been to Colorado on an elk hunt. I've been to Kentucky, and critters down on both of those trips. So it's been a heck of a good season for me already. I guess we could get into the Colorado trip. So this hunt was put on through, hopefully I get the name right, the Minnesota Outdoors Foundation. I think that's what it's called. But anyway, it's kind of like a Make-A-Wish type deal where they do hunts and fishing trips and stuff for, veterans and people that have, terminal sicknesses. So Ernie Powers through Tethered, he is part of that foundation, and he basically did a hunt for a family friend of his. His name's Jacob, call him JD. He's got stage 4 brain cancer, and they got this hunt hooked up for him. It was the first week of September. It was actually a rifle tag for the opener in Colorado. So I flew out there. I'll be honest, I was nervous about this trip just because I knew of JD's condition, and that was really about it. I didn't know him or his dad. I didn't know, really anything about the outfitter or anything like that. So I was kind of going into this trip, blind. But, man, it couldn't have turned out more awesome. And, huge blessing to be a part of. Flew out there, met all the guides, hung out with them for the evening, and that was a whole lot of fun to me. A whole new group of people in a new place, and it was just like any other hunting camp. I mean,
That's awesome.
They hadn't seen each other for since last season, and they were all razzing each other, and I mean, it was basically like our hunting camp.
Yeah,
it was.
So I thought the whole time it was like you, Greg, and Ernie going out there, and then I was talking to you, and I was like, "Well, when's Ernie getting in?" And you're like, "They're not. It's just me." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Man, that's kind of one of those situations you fly into blind, but it turns out awesome. It's cool.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I honestly didn't even know who I was meeting or anything like that. I landed in Denver, and I'm texting Ernie. I'm like, "Hey, who do I need to get hold of at the airport to pick me up? Because I don't know anybody." I knew the name of the outfitter. That was about it. But no, they picked me up at the airport, and it was through Cross Mountain Outfitters near Hayden, Colorado. And man, it was incredible. We Tanner Creel was our guide. He's a younger fellow. I think he's 21, 22. But, man, he knows his stuff in the elk woods. And one heck of a caller. Very dry out there. We had a little bit of trouble, figuring out the elk. But, too, those guys hadn't been in the woods at all. So we were just going to, historically good spots and, just trying to figure out where the elk were at. And, we were into elk pretty much every day. We ended up finding a couple bulls up in the end of this canyon. There's a lot of water up in there, so I'm I feel like that's why they were in there. There was, good green feed for them and water and dark timber, so it was kind of just a good spot for elk, But we found a big 6x6 up in the head of that canyon, and we tried to get JD set up to shoot. We're on the side of this nasty, nasty hill. I mean, it was really steep and oak brush, and really thick and all that. And we just couldn't get him set up to shoot good. And we ended up hearing another bull bugle farther down the canyon, kind of in a more accessible spot. And it took a little bit of cat and mouse, getting set up on him. But we finally got set up and called that bull out of there that evening. And, I was on this trip to video. That was my sole job, was to video and take pictures. And, this bull comes out and he's bugling. He's right below us. We made a move to where we could see him, and he was down there raking a tree. And we got JD set up to shoot, and Tanner said, take the safety off and get ready to kill him. As soon as he clicked that safety off, man, the adrenaline, he was shaking so bad. He could not get solid on that thing. And I think what was worse is I was shaking worse than he was, man. I was jacked up. But we ended up doing that a couple times back and forth. Couldn't get on him because he was shaking too bad. And it actually ended up working out perfect because the bull turned and come right out this real pretty little field right below us, 135 yards, and he shot it. And
you got it all on camera.
Got it all on camera.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever asked you about the video.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I was wondering if you got it.
Yeah, got the shot on camera. It's got the bull going down, and the whole emotions. Afterwards, it was. I'm not gonna lie. It was an emotional thing between the guides and JD and his dad and all of us. I mean, we're all working hard as we can to make it an awesome hunt for him. And man, it definitely turned out better than I would imagine. I thought it was going to be a hard hunt going into, or I thought it was going to be an easy hunt going into it. It's guided place, private land, but it was actually we had to work for it pretty hard.
Yeah, I know you said talking to you that it was way more than what you expected, way harder than what you expected that to be.
It was hot, it was dry. We ended up having to hike decent amount to try to get on elk, but it was a lot of fun. It was really my first experience elk hunting too, so I learned a lot from the guides. And just seeing those things when you get them on the ground, it's like, holy cow, they're so big.
Yeah.
I mean, you think a big whitetail buck is a lot to handle when you get one down, but man, that's a whole nother realm right there.
Yeah, it definitely is. The first time I ever had an elk was actually in Hayden, Colorado. It was the first time I ever had one close to me, and it was a big cow and a calf with it, and they ran 10 feet behind me. I was on one side of a bush, they were on the other, and I was like, whoa, I've never seen anything like that before.
I mean, their head's like a horse. It's so big.
It's wild.
It's super cool. But that was an awesome trip, getting to experience that, and for JD to get that bull, that was just, it's going to be hard to top that hunt for me this year. Just the circumstances behind it, but thankful that I got to be a part. But our deer season's already kicked off, and we've both got deer on the ground.
Yeah, it's getting going. I'm pretty glad with this urban hunt that I was able to drop to so quickly. Like I said, there's not a lot of deer there now. My buddy that hunts with me is struggling a little bit even to see one. So he's upset. I killed 2 both times he was with me. And so the way that hunt works, you got to earn a buck, so you got to kill 2 does in order to get a buck tag. So
right. So you got your buck tag.
I have
now.
a buck tag. I'm probably going to take it pretty easy now. Be a little more particular about where and when I'm hunting.
Right.
Maybe try to target in. I know a couple areas. There's a video from last year where I had either 5 or 7 bucks in velvet come off this point. I'll probably go in there and scout that a little bit. So if any of those bucks are still around, there'd be 3-year-old bucks probably now.
Yeah, big enough.
Yeah.
And it's an extra tag too. So
yeah. I mean, that's
really
the
matter.
thing. There's 7 you get 7 tags, 2 buck tags and 5 doe tags. So you got to earn both the bucks. So
if you shoot 1 buck, you got to shoot 2 more does to get another tag. Okay, gotcha.
I can keep shooting does. Then that's I won't pass up a deer there. No matter. I mean, I will pass up a buck there. I won't pass up a doe there.
Yeah.
So it's a fun hunt though. It's so much. It's interesting, and it's different. A lot different than how I would hunt most places, but
yeah. So you've already had run-ins with some different people there. Talk about that. You're the guy that grabbed your arrow. And,
yeah. So the first day of that opener, a doe comes in about 7:15, and I shoot her. And I was sitting there and I was hoping to fill my other doe tag, so I just sat tight and was texting my buddy, and I see a guy on a bike with a cart behind it coming down this trail. And I was texting my buddy, and I said, "What's this guy doing?" Because he could see him too from where he was at. He said, "I have no idea." And then I hear a weed eater start up, and he starts weed eating. And I was like, "Is he down there towards you?" And he said, "No, I think he's working up his way towards you." So he weed eats around, weed eating this trail, comes directly underneath my tree stand, and I videoed him there for a few minutes. And he stops to change the line on his trimmer, and I hollered at him and scared him absolutely to death. He had no idea he was directly below me. And I said, "Hey, I just shot a doe, so if you don't mind, hold off while I make sure she's not still alive down there and you're going to bump her." So he did that. He was a nice dude. And I went down, and the doe actually went out into the field. I thought she came back behind me and went down in the woods, but that turned out to be a different deer. That doe made it about 20 yards before she died. I heart punched her pretty good. And so anyway, I go and find that deer. That guy starts weed eating again, and I'm walking back to my tree stand to get my camera gear, saddle, all that stuff. And there's a guy standing there holding my arrow and just staring at it, like trying to figure. I don't know. He acted like he'd never seen one before, but he was staring at it, looking at it. And I said, it's kind of snuck up on him too. I don't think he was expecting anybody to be out. I said, "Hey, buddy, you got something of mine there." And he jumped, and he said, oh, yeah, here you go, sir. Handed it back to me, and I started to walk off, and he goes, "Are you hunting?" And I said, "Yep, I sure am." Which I don't know. The guy in camouflage asking him if they're hunting when you're holding his arrow in his hand. I don't know. He must not realize it, and he looked at his hands, and they were just covered in dark red blood from that arrow. And he said, "I didn't realize that there was a hunting season in." I said, "Yeah, it's the first day of urban hunting." And he says, "Well, we have a couple guys up here weed eating, cutting the running trails." And I said, "Oh, really?"
Didn't notice that.
I had no clue when the guy was 5 feet underneath my tree. Those guys actually, it helped me out because they trimmed out the trail that I had to drag my doe down. So I ended up running into them 3 or 4 times. But my buddy Jason, 2 days later, was hunting his stand, and at 6:45, right at daylight, he had 4 runners run past him on that trail. So it's those deer don't pay any attention to people running, but you get up in a tree, and they are scared to death of you all of a sudden.
That's funny. So are you hunting like the same exact trees you were hunting last year?
Both of these does came out of the same tree that I killed all the does out of last year.
Nice.
And it's just a good, all the deer kind of filter back out of these. It almost reminds you of like CRP, or something like that. Yep. It's just super thick field. They filter back out of it and go back in these hardwoods and bed. And I think a lot of bucks bed in that field rather than
I'm sure
out of it. But there's not near the amount of deer sign that there was last year in there, and not near the amount of deer. I've seen 2 deer, and I've killed 2 deer. Killed both of them, not counting the one that ran away. I guess I've seen 3 deer, but
yeah, so definitely something's different this year.
Yeah, I mean, last year I saw a bunch within the first 5 minutes of hunting there, and saw that buck that I ended up killing on the first day. So they're.
Yeah, do you think the EHD has wiped them out that much, or is it something different?
I think it's EHD. I think that it's probably also just this dry weather.
Yeah.
I think they're probably somewhere. I mean, my buddy's been hunting close to the creeks, but it's still real hot in there.
Yeah.
I feel like somewhere in a bottom, like real damp place. That's how it is at my farm when it's real hot like this. And I think I've showed you pictures before.
Yep.
In that one bottom that's real heavy shaded,
Yeah.
I'll put cameras, and when I won't have any pictures of deer anywhere else when it's dry, those cameras will be loaded, and there'll be 30 does in a picture.
Yeah.
They just like get in those cool spots and just stay there. Plus, there's oaks dropping in them, so it's a pretty easy place for them to stay cool and stay fed and have water.
Yeah, I see that here behind the house where I hunt. A lot of times these bucks are bedding up close to the ridge tops like normal, but when it gets hot and dry like this, they drop down a little bit where it's cooler, and they still got the wind advantage and everything, but they're down more in the creek bottoms where it's like 10 degrees cooler, and I don't blame them. That's where I'd be too.
Yeah, me too. That's what there are some beds that I've found out on my farm that instead of being a third down from the top, they're about a third up from the bottom.
Yeah,
and
I've seen that.
They'll bed on those points right before it drops off to a creek.
Yep.
I found a lot of beds like that out there, and definitely buck beds, early season buck beds. There'll be rubs all around them, and they just bed down low.
I killed one here in 2013. It was a year a lot like this. It was really, really dry, and first day of season, I watched a buck get up out of his bed, like you said, right, like the first drop off right above the creek, and he was in some laurel thicket around some big rocks, and those big rocks, I mean, they're nice and cool, and they'll bed up under the edge of them, and that's where this buck was, and I went in like 5 days later and killed him right in the same spot. So that's something to look for if you're hunting a really dry area.
You were beast hunting before beast hunting was cool.
I was, yeah.
2013.
That was even before my saddle days. I carried a climber in that night. I was actually hooking the climber onto the tree, and that was the one that was bedded 25 yards away, and he stood up out of his bed, and I shot him. Yeah. Yeah, I was hooking my climber on the tree, and I saw his antlers in a treetop just down right from me. I knew he was bedded or close. I didn't think he was that freaking close, but he had no clue I was there. Stood up and heart punched him at 25 yards on the ground. So that was a pretty sweet hunt.
Yeah.
But yeah, while Grant was getting started on the urban hunt, I went to Kentucky, Western Kentucky, and I was down there for about a week or so, and man, that was a fun trip. Parker McDonald from Southern Ground and Michael Pike and a couple other guys had been hunting down there, and I got down on a Tuesday. I left here real early Tuesday morning, got down there Tuesday afternoon, and I got camp set up and I got to work. I went out that evening driving around looking to see where guys were hunting at, and the pressure was actually a lot higher than I thought it was going to be. There was a lot more people hunting. All the bean fields had people on them, like every single one. There was trucks parked all over them. So I kind of quickly realized that I was probably going to have to think outside the box a little more and not worry about those field edges as much. So I just started looking at spots that I had marked, and that first evening I didn't find anything. Parker actually ended up shooting his buck that evening when I got there. So I went and helped him get his out, packed it out. He shot his on the edge of a bean field. And then the next morning, I didn't get up and hunt that morning because I didn't want to go in completely blind in the dark, never even been on the property. So I just kind of slept in, and then, still got up fairly early, went out. I scouted this cornfield up on the top of a ridge, and there's a isolated water hole way back in there, about a little over a mile back in there, so it's a pretty good hike back in there. I didn't see any trucks parked alongside the road or anything, so I was like, man, there's nobody in here. So I hiked back there, videoing the whole thing, doing interviews on my camera, shooting B-roll of this pond and corn and all kind of stuff, and picked out the tree that I wanted to hunt out of that evening. It was a nice little pinch point between the timber and the pond. It was like 30 yards wide. I was like, man, this just makes perfect sense. Nobody's been back in here. I turn around and I see a strap on the tree, and I'm like, what the heck is that? And, I follow the strap up the tree, and there's a dude sitting in the lock-on stand 25 yards away, and he's just staring at me. I'm like, oh, man. It's like
Don't
the
you
most
love
awkward thing ever.
I swear, it seems like when I'm scouting, and especially new property or like public land somewhere up in PA or wherever, I'm like looking at spots, and I finally, like, I mark a spot and I get to it. I'm like, this is legit. Like, I'll kill a monster here, and then turn around and there's a ladder stand or a chain on it or something.
Yeah, that's
I've never had a guy in it, so
Yeah.
that's got to be awkward.
It was like 9:30 that morning. It was already 90 degrees, and I don't think I messed him up too bad because those deer had already filtered back off that crop field. But he was looking at me like you could tell, like, come on, dude. And I felt like a jerk, but I mean, what else you gonna do? I mean, I was just getting there. I had to get some scouting in, so I tucked my tail between my legs pretty quick and snuck out of there. Tried not to make any noise, but I ended up going around to the other side of the crop field and dropping off onto a point that kind of came off the crop field, and I found a white oak dropping and found some deer sign, and then I jumped up what I assume was a buck. It was by itself, pretty big bodied deer. So I kind of started putting pieces together. I walked that whole transition line where the crop field meets like real thick CRP grass and then into hardwoods, and found a really good parallel trail down in the timber that kind of skirted the edge of these points. And I followed it clear to the back of this section and found a really, really good funnel back there. I found a plum tree that was dropping, and the deer had been hitting that. And it just made perfect sense. I'm on the same crop field that I just saw this guy, but I'm completely on the other side. I mean, it's a real big field. So I decided to hunt there that night. So snuck in there. The only thing I saw was a fawn that evening, a spotted fawn. And as I was walking out, there was deer in the corn. And I'd kind of looked at another spot that morning that was closer to the truck, and all those deer were right there. So if I'd have hunted closer to the truck, I would have seen them. So kept that spot in the back of my mind. The next morning, my buddy Clayton, he had been there hunting a few days before me, and he had already left, but he sent me a pin on Onyx to check out. It was a completely different part of the property. I'd never been there. It was kind of catching deer coming out of the corner of a bean field, headed up a drainage onto some points that were back in the timber. So it was kind of a feed to bed pattern, catching them, feeding on acorns, going back to bed. So as I'm driving in that morning, this is when I got the intel for my evening sit, was where I killed my buck. So I'm driving down this gravel road. There's a cornfield on my right, brush on my left, and then that brush connects to some bean fields. So I see this deer coming up to a parking lot in the bend of a road, and there's a deer standing in the parking lot, and I could tell it was a bigger bodied deer. It was a buck. So he just walks across the parking lot, across the gravel road into that brush. So I'm thinking, all right, I need to check out this spot on Onyx and see what's down in there. So
I was listening to Parker's podcast that you were on the other night, and just listened to it this morning before I came over here, actually. And I started thinking about what you all said on there. You're like, how many people see that deer and don't even think about to follow up, or like don't even think about, like, I wonder where that thing's bedding. And I start thinking about all the places that I've hunted in the past, and I was like, oh man, that's a nice buck. All right, I'm going to keep driving up here.
You don't even think about it.
Just don't even think. And I was like, shoot, I do that all the time. I don't even realize it.
Yeah, and that's an important thing to point out, too, on an out-of-state trip. You don't have that many days to get it done. The pressure's on, so you need to use whatever intel you're given.
Yeah.
And, man, that was the best thing that could have happened right there, was seeing that deer, because as he was going into that brush, I'm thinking, why is he going that way? Like, there's got to be something. They're not traveling too far this time of year, and this was right before daylight, so I figured, he's going back to bed somewhere close. So as I go hunt another spot that was probably half mile away. So I pull out Onyx, start looking at this, and it's basically like a little hub in between crop fields, and there's a water hole right in the middle of it. Like you can see it plain as day on the aerial map. And there's, thick CRP, brush, pockets of timber and water all between bean fields and corn fields. It's like, it just makes perfect sense. You got to go check it out. So when I got down that morning, I actually went and looked at another spot. I ended up hiking 4.5 miles. It was 98 degrees when I got back to my truck.
Gosh.
I literally, and the video's out right now. So if you go on Tether Nation or Hunt Appalachia, this video from this hunt is out. So you could see in this video, like I'm struggling pretty bad. It was awful.
You looked rougher than Parker McDonald after he climbs a tree with poison ivy all over it.
Yeah, old Parker, he was struggling a little bit. But, I went on this big hike, was all gung-ho about it until I got out there and then realized I had to hike back. I had one half bottle of water that wasn't even cold, and I was about a mile from the truck, and I was like, man, I'm not sure if I'm going to make it or not. Like, I was getting dizzy.
Oh, geez.
Just, it wasn't good. I mean, I was honestly getting a little bit worried, so I was stopping in the shade every so often to take a break or whatever and make sure I wasn't going to die. But I eventually made it back to my truck, sat in the truck with the AC on full blast for probably 20 minutes or so. Got cooled down. I was like, well, I have to go check out that spot where I saw that buck go into. So I'm looking at the map, and I'm like, well, if I park right there, it's like a 60-yard walk to that water hole. But the thing I didn't realize was, and I didn't see it driving in the dark, is this pocket of woods is like blocked off by like 10-foot tall grass. So you can't even see. Yeah. You can't see the wood line. You can't see the bean field that's in the kind of an isolated corner. So I was like, man, it makes sense to me now. So I snuck in there real slow. It was super dry, so the leaves were really, really crunchy. So I slipped down to this water hole, and the water hole was literally, we're sitting here at a little table out here on my dad's porch. The water hole was just a little bit bigger than this table. Huh. And I started looking at the tracks around it. I wanted to see if there was any buck tracks, and there was buck tracks around it. Huh. Like good, 3-finger tracks. Yeah. You can tell it's not like a big buck, but it's not a doe. It's probably a decent buck. So I start looking around the pond, and you got these little shrubby trees and tall grass, and there's rubs on every one of those trees, like old rubs, like from the year before. But I saw that, and then I start looking around these clumps of trees, and there's beds around them. I'm like, man, this is just too good. It's freaking perfect. So I back out of the woods. I look along the edge of the bean field. There's like a little strip of CRP that comes out of that, from that water hole up into the end of this bean field, and there's trails all through it. Nice, probably 3-4 foot tall grass. Perfect stuff for security cover. So I kind of knew where I needed to be, so I backed out and left. Went back to the trailer. It's blazing hot, so I tried to lay down for a little bit and get cooled off, which didn't really happen. I ended up falling asleep for a couple hours. I woke up, it was 5:30. I was like, man, I need to get moving, because it's almost a half-hour drive from the campsite to where we're hunting at. So get loaded up, drive back out there. I met up with Parker. I had lost my milkweed, and we did a roadside deal, and he gave me a pocket full of weed.
Gave you an eighth.
Yeah.
Milkweed.
Gave me some milkweed. Parked the truck right beside the road. It was a long, hard walk in there, 60 yards or so. And the setup went awful. It was terrible. It was one of those setups where after you get set up, you're like, I'm going to kill a deer tonight because nothing has gone right. That was the time I was having. So the trees on the edges of these fields at this place were big, gnarly trees, a lot of vines, just really thick. The edges are really, really thick. So I had trouble finding a tree. I finally found a tree where I could see out into the field and into the CRP, and got set up, and it's 95 degrees, 97% humidity. Oof. Just sitting there, just lovely, dripping sweat. But it started to cool off, started to get dark, and I hear something behind me coming around the tip of the woods. back toward where I walked in, like close to the truck. So I look back there and I see a deer walking. I'm like, all right, here we go. And it was by itself. So I went ahead and picked up my bow, got the camera out onto the field because that's the direction it was headed. Got turned around for a weak side shot because that was how it was looking like it was going to set up for the saddle. So I get turned around to the right, and I kind of lose sight of the deer in the brush for a little bit, and then I hear it walking in the woods. And I'm thinking, oh, man, this is not good. This is not where I need him to come. So he turns hard left, comes straight into the woods with me, and is walking right to my tree. So I had to lift the bow up over the bridge, pivot hard to my left, and it was basically like a 7 o'clock shot, which is easy in a saddle. It's no issue at all.
Yeah.
But I had all these limbs behind me that I didn't move because I'm planning on they're going to come out this strip of CRP into the beans. So he comes in behind me. I wheel around real quick. I grunt to stop him before I'm even ready because I only got one hole to shoot through. So I grunt. He stops in that hole and looks right up at me. As I'm trying to get my bow draw back, I got it hung up in this maple limb behind me, and he's just standing there looking at me. I don't think he could quite see up in the canopy I was in was really dark, so I don't think he could see up in there. But I got drawn back, and I kind of rushed my shot a little bit because it needed to happen like right now, So I shot, hit him bit high, went right through both shoulder blades, broke his spine, and just dumped him right there. He dropped, and he was laying there on his back, couldn't get up, so I put another one in him, and he was dead 15 yards from the tree. And I got a bit excited, man. I was jacked.
I would have been too. Yeah, I got the phone call from Jared. The phone call I always get. It was he was excited. I asked him how big it was. He said, I don't know. It's tall and it's in velvet. And I said, that's good enough.
Good enough. That's usually the case with me. Like, this is a running pattern. Like, how big is it? I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I'm the same way. My deer could range, after I shoot them, anywhere from 90 inches to 160 inches.
And they're usually
on
the smaller
80.
end of the scale.
Yeah. But you just never know. I had a buck last year that went right at daylight, went across a field, and I texted Jared and our buddy LG, and I was like, I just saw 135. And then I looked at my video, and I was like, that was 115 all day. But
they always look a lot bigger. But this deer, like, I honestly didn't get a good look at him.
Yeah.
And on an out-of-state trip like this,
yeah.
and honestly, I figured they'd be out of velvet by the time I got there.
Yeah.
And as soon as I saw that full velvet and I thought that he was an 8, I was like, I don't care how big he is. He's getting shot.
That's it. Like, I mean, you watch Parker's videos. He hunted a lot of days. And,
yeah.
I think he saw some bucks. He bumped some bucks and had seen some bucks, but from stand, I don't think he saw a whole lot of deer moving. So you take what opportunity gives you.
Yeah, I mean, you can go into it saying you're going to pass whatever, looking for a certain age class. The way that I set up and hunt, you really don't have time to judge them.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got a split second to make a decision, and my decision is usually to shoot them. I mean, that's just how I am.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not hung up on score or size, really. I mean, I'm after a decent buck, obviously, and he was definitely a decent buck. He was really pretty.
Well, and out of state's a lot different than here too. If it's in your backyard,
yeah, you kind of know what's around.
Yeah, those out of state hunts are tough, and I'm once again this year pretty daggone disappointed that I didn't go. Every single year, I plan on a trip to Kentucky. It gets canceled, so
yeah,
I'll figure out what it's going to be next year. I have a bunch of spots marked, and I wish I'd have had you log into my Onyx and mark your spots, what you hunted and where you checked out, because usually we're pretty similar. If we're looking at spots, we'll usually check out the same ones. So I'd have been interested to see what you actually checked out. And I had one spot that I was pretty sure I was going to kill a 180 on. So
well, there are giant bucks there, and I feel like I had some really good spots marked. Obviously, I didn't get to check them all. You can only do so much scouting when it's that hot in the middle of the day. I mean, you hunt in the morning, scout for a couple hours, and then you've got to take a break for a little while before the evening hunt, or you're just going to kill yourself.
Yeah.
So that's what I was running into, is just, after scouting for 2-3 hours after the morning hunt, you just had to chill out for a little bit. And I mean, especially if you're going to hunt for a week, I mean, you just cannot burn yourself out.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to hunt hard and smart and all that, but man, if you go all out every day, you're going to burn yourself out, and then it's not going to be any fun. So I was trying to be smart about it, and luckily I saw that buck cross the road, because that was the game changer right there. Was seeing the buck
awesome.
and then putting it together, and then like Parker said on his podcast, I was just on there, just came out yesterday. He kind of called me out because I said it was an overlooked spot, and it is, but there were other people hunting that spot, and I didn't realize it, but there was a ground blind in the back corner of this bean field, but it was across the field, kind of on the other side, about 100 yards away from me. And then I didn't know it, but there was a guy had a ladder stand set up on the other side, hunting the other side of this bean field. So there was people in there, but I feel like I got in just tight enough to where they were bedding that they're skirting around these tree stands.
Yeah.
That's what it seemed like to me.
Well, and like like hearing you describe it, it reminds me of the one deer I shot late season last year.
Yeah.
It had the people who were hunting there pegged.
Yeah.
Big time. I did something a little bit different.
Just a little bit different.
And and was able to kill it. And I wasn't even trying to. I was looking for a doe, but regardless, it knew what everybody there was doing, and was had them pegged. But yeah, that's kind of whenever I was cyber scouting Kentucky, most of the spots I was picking, I was trying to keep in mind that these overlooked areas or areas that are close to roads might be just as good.
Yeah, I mean, anywhere you hunt, there's going to be spots like that where guys just don't go, and that's where these bucks are at. That's where they're spending their daylight hours, because they know that they're safe.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to bed where they don't have any human intrusion and scent on the ground, basically. But they're, where they're bedding, they're keeping tabs on everybody. Yeah. Like where this buck was at, he could hear every truck drive up that road.
Huh.
And he had multiple escape routes, out of these fingers of woods. He could disappear pretty quick. So, thinking back on the way he came in, I'm pretty sure he was coming in to skirt that ground blind.
Yeah.
Because he kind of came around the edge of the woods until he was at the point where he could see the blind, and then he just ducked into the woods. And I'm pretty sure he was just going to make a circle around to the bottom side. Because as the hill drops off where the ground blind was, you can't really see that side of the field, and that's where he was headed to. I think he was just going to make a circle downwind, and I'm pretty sure that's what he was doing, but I was there waiting for him.
Yeah. That's good. How about, because anytime I kill deer when it's 90 degrees out, if I, for some reason, post it online, I have 35 people who say, I never hunt until the first frost. All the meat will spoil.
Yeah.
How was your care for the meat, and how did it work out for you?
Yeah, that's a good question, and one that I wanted to get into, actually, because I just got into a debate on Facebook this morning with a guy talking about he doesn't want to hunt till the end of October because it's too hot and the meat will spoil. So, I shot this deer, temps in the 90s. It was cooling down to about mid-70s at night. So, we took all our pictures, video. It was well after dark. We got him out of there about 10 o'clock. Loaded him in the back of my truck. I bought 4 big bags of ice at the gas station. We drove back. I butchered him right on the tailgate of my truck. I had gutted him in the field to make him lighter to drag out. It wasn't a far drag out, so I didn't have to, but when it's that hot, you want to get that body cavity emptied out so those guts aren't holding all that heat. So got the guts out of him, got him in the back of the truck. I took those bags of ice and just laid them on top of him just to start that cooling process. So I get back to the campground and slid him out on the tailgate of my truck, and I basically did, the way you would quarter one, the gutless method, which if you haven't seen that, look it up on YouTube. It's how most Western hunters get their deer out of the backcountry, because you're obviously not going to drag them 2 or 3 miles. But you basically split them from the back of the head down their neck, clear to their tail, and then you can start peeling that hide down. I debone the shoulders right on the carcass. You can debone them real easy. You get that shoulder meat and the neck meat off all in one piece. So got all that cut off, and I'm just chucking it into those coolers on top of ice. So I deboned the whole thing. I caped him out for a mount because I'm going to get him mounted. So I caped the whole face out. And then obviously I have the velvet antlers to deal with to keep cold. So I had 3 things in really hot weather to keep cool. So I got the meat on ice. I got the cape in a garbage bag, but the cape is not balled up at all. So you don't want to ball that cape up where it'll hold the heat in. So I spread the cape out in a garbage bag and laid it on top of the ice to keep it dry. And then I actually had to go buy another cooler because the cooler I had wasn't big enough. So I went to Walmart. I bought one of the Lifetime coolers. It's a rotor molded cooler like a Yeti, but it's like, 3/4 the price, whatever. A lot cheaper.
I respect you a lot more for having one of those instead of a Yeti.
Yeah.
I don't think you're as big of a turd.
No offense to you Yeti owners out there.
A little bit of offense to you Yeti. Nah.
But point being is, if you're going to do out-of-state hunts like this, invest in a good cooler.
Yeah.
You don't have to buy a Yeti. I've got an Ozark Trail from Walmart that does a great job, and then the Lifetime from Walmart. They're about $150, and they're well worth it. So I had those 2 coolers. I packed the velvet antlers down in the cooler in 2 trash bags to keep it dry, with ice packed around it. And then, the next morning after I had the cape cooled off, I actually laid the cape on a bath towel and then put another towel on top of it and then double bagged that in a garbage bag and then laid that on top of ice in the cooler. And every few hours I was flipping it, to get that cold, the ice side up against that cape. So I kept the cape, the meat, and the antlers in coolers for a week in 95-degree heat.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely fine.
Yeah.
No issues whatsoever. Didn't lose anything. Nothing stunk. The meat was clean as could be, like as clean as you'd ever want meat. So it's just common sense. It really is. It's not that hard. It's not difficult. A deer's body temperature runs a lot hotter than we do. I don't know the exact temperature they run at. It's up near 100 degrees, I believe. So, you kill one in 80-degree temperatures, it's going to go through a kind of a natural cooling process anyway. But point being, get the quarters off the bone, especially the back hams. They hold a lot of heat. That bone holds a lot of heat. Get them off the bone, get them into a cooler, and just keep an eye on it, really.
Yeah,
it's really not a big deal.
Of course, I haven't been on any out-of-state hunts or anything like that, but my first doe that I killed, it got up to the mid to upper 80s that day.
Yep.
And you check them in at a police station, and first thing the guy said to me was, "You better get something done with that deer. It's going to spoil." And I'm like, "Listen, bro, I've done this before." But I took it home, and I have a refrigerator that is a dedicated meat refrigerator. And my wife hates it that I've taken it over, but it's just too bad. And I mean, within, I'd say 15 minutes, I can probably get one quartered up in 15 minutes pretty easily.
Yep.
We jerk the hide off. I skinned them because I can hang them up there. Just skinned it, jerk the hide off, quarter them up in the fridge, and I just ate some of the meat off that first doe I killed last night, and it was incredible. I like to leave them in there for about a week.
Yeah.
And it was good. So.
Yeah, I just got. Yesterday was Friday, so it'd been exactly a week since I put that deer in that cooler, and
Yeah.
I kept it in that cooler the whole time on ice.
Huh.
And the meat was sitting on top of the ice, and all that blood drained down through the ice. And
Yeah.
it was super, super clean.
Yeah.
And I got all of it processed, and man, it's perfect. So,
Yeah.
I mean, just use common sense. If you're out west hunting, most grocery stores have dry ice. It's not really the case around here in the eastern states because I don't think that many people use it. But
Yeah.
if you're in a place where you can get dry ice, a block of that will freeze a whole cooler full of meat, no issue at all.
Yeah.
So,
And I get a lot of those guys that say that they don't want to hunt until mid-October or whatever. It's because they don't enjoy hunting in the heat.
yeah,
For me, it is the best. I like hunting early season better than I like the rut.
yeah,
I love hunting early, and everybody's different, but it's definitely not a concern. If you're going to put the time towards hunting, then put the time towards care for the meat that you harvest, and you're good to go. Take a little
Yeah.
bit of extra time, and you're fine.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing you really got to worry about hunting really hot weather in early season like this is if you make a bad shot
Yeah.
on one and it's got to lay overnight. Then you're going to get into some issues. Even then, you can be okay. I shot a buck a couple years ago. It was 82 degrees when I shot him.
I remember
and
that.
I made a bad shot on him. I hit him. He was quartering toward me, and I tried to be a crack shot and shoot him, in front of the shoulder, and it didn't work out. I hit him behind the shoulder, and it come out low, way far back, and I had to leave him go overnight. And it got down into probably the high 60s that night, and I found him right away the next morning, and he was fine.
Yeah.
No issues at all.
I got lucky on this doe that I killed yesterday, and I tried to do the same thing, be a crack shot, which that urban hunt is not the place to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Well, I know why. I know why I took the shot, because I was really confident that I was going to hit her where I wanted, and she was coming in directly below me, so every step she took was a worse angle.
Yep.
And so I shot her quartered to me at about 10 yards or so. But every step she took, she got closer to the bottom of my tree. So it was just getting worse and worse. And I thought, if I'm going to shoot her, I better do it now. And I was aiming for the front, in front of her front shoulder.
Yep.
And hit right about the middle of it. Didn't hit bone, and got one lung, liver, and guts.
Yeah. So still a pretty good shot.
My buddy who was he's probably 200 or 250 yards below me. She ran down and stood in the creek, and could have crossed over onto private land, and so he shot her again. I think she probably would have died.
Right there.
Yeah, I don't think she would have made it very far, especially the terrain right there along that creek's real steep. I don't think she would have made it out of it.
Yeah.
But wasn't a great shot. It might have been a different story yesterday if she would have gone all day, and I would have
Yeah, for sure.
would have had to track her all day or something. But I love hunting this early season. It's what I'm made for. Once those bucks start running all over the place, I feel like I'm at a big disadvantage and I can't find them. So
I mean, it's just like I love hunting so much that season's in, I'm hunting. I don't care if it was 100 degrees or more. I would still be out there.
Yep.
I'd complain about the heat, but
yeah, I would too. But
I'd still be there.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd rather hunt in the heat than I would the freezing cold.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just me. But I mean, deer right now are just so much more predictable.
Yeah.
If you could find them, you can kill them. I
Yeah.
mean, I've killed some of my best bucks in the early season
Me
when
too.
it's hot.
I've killed probably my top 3 bucks. I would say were all killed on the first day of bow season.
Yeah.
So
I mean, in 2016, I killed a 5.5-year-old
yeah, that was
brute of a buck
yeah.
on October 1st, and it was hot that afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew where they would be bedding just because it's cooler there, and that's exactly where he was at. And it was, he didn't move. He didn't make it 70 yards from his bed when I shot him right at dark. So they're not moving far.
Yeah.
So you got to be tight in on them. It takes some scouting to get on them, but once you figure them out this time of year, I mean, if you can be somewhat smart about your access and your wind and all that stuff, I mean, this is a great time of year to put a buck on the ground for sure.
And if you pay attention once they transition, all these, you got summer patterns, and then once the nuts start dropping, and they kind of transition their patterns a little bit. But if you're hunting a place for a long time, you'll figure out where most of them are going to move to, or where most of them, how they change. You'll learn over a couple years, basically how to do it. On my farm, I generally have a good idea, but this year the one big buck I had on camera, he disappeared midsummer, so I don't know where to find him now. But
he did that midsummer transition period and left.
He's fooled me. So what all plans do you have? Let's see, season's a week away.
Yeah.
The regular season. So what kind of plans you got starting next weekend?
Yeah, so our season comes in the 28th.
Yep.
I don't have a whole lot of time before I leave on my next trip, so I'm going to take my son Austin and my wife probably the first morning, trying to figure out a game plan for them. They're not after a big buck or whatever, just anything I could put them on. So
they're both saddle hunting too.
They're both
right?
saddle hunting.
That's
so
awesome.
I've got to get all that gear together, make sure they're dialed in this coming week. So that's going to be some work, but make sure they're ready to go. I'm going to try to have spots picked out for them for the opening morning. And, it's going to be one of those deals where I'm trying to catch them come back to bed. So going to have to be, I don't like hunting mornings this time of year, to be honest. It's harder for me, to get on at least a good buck. It's harder, but if I can get them on a doe or something, that'd be cool. And then I'll be hunting the first evening, and then maybe Sunday morning, and then I'm headed to Michigan for the Public Land Challenge. So the location of that has changed. I'm not 100% sure where it's at. So this is going to be another one of those trips where going in blind. But man, this year, like these trips flying by the seat of my pants is not something that I normally do, because I'm one of those people that I have everything planned out to a T, where I'm going to go, where I'm going to stay, what I'm going to do. And that this year is breaking me of that big time. And it's a lot of fun, actually. So
who is on your team in the Public Land Challenge?
I don't even know.
Oh, boy.
So I have no idea.
Greg's not actually hunting, though, is he?
I think he is.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I know what team I'm not betting on.
Yeah, I don't know. They're actually coming back from it, or I don't know if they're coming back yet, but they've been elk hunting in Montana for the past week, and I haven't heard of anything hitting the dirt. So
that's tough.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure you guys will hear a podcast about that. Maybe not. Maybe they don't want to talk about it. I don't know.
I bet Greg don't want to talk about it.
And maybe they'll kill one today. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know when they're coming back, but they've been elk hunting. Me and Grant have been whacking whitetails, and
yeah, it's fun. My opener, I don't have any plans for, really. I have a thing I got to go to Saturday night, so I won't be able to hunt that evening, and that kind of took away any major plan for me to go get like a first day buck.
Yeah.
I'll go. I think my plan is going to be to scout in the morning and check cameras, and I have that next weekend open to do whatever, to hunt wherever. So I'm gonna probably try to scout a plan for the next weekend, really, and then if I can find wherever this buck went on me. He's the only buck I've seen on my farm that had any interest in shooting.
Yeah.
So if I can find where he is, then maybe put a plan on him the next week and get after that. And then after that, I'm going bear hunting the next weekend, I think.
Oh, nice.
And then I'm going up to PA the next weekend after that. So I figure, since I don't have my target buck, don't know where he is, finding him is going to be the most important thing. So I don't think I'll even hunt that first weekend.
Yeah, I think I'm going to focus a lot on just a lot of in-season scouting this year, because I actually have the time to do it now. Like, that's always been the struggle before, is like, I don't want to be out tromping all over the woods when I don't have a whole lot of time. Like,
well, it's hard to find, you find fresh sign and then try to hunt it a week later. It doesn't make any sense.
You're too late,
when you find it, you need to get on it. And that's kind of my worry is if I do find where that buck is and I find some good fresh sign that by the time I get to hunt him again, it's going to be too late.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, this time of year, I mean, they're shifting patterns, especially when you get into October. I mean, they'll be on a pattern for 3 or 4 or 5 days, and then they're going on to the next food source, whatever. So if you see any kind of pattern right now, I mean, you need to take advantage of it, like, immediately. So, I mean, I've got cameras out and stuff. I haven't checked them yet. The last few years, I've just been relying less and less on trail cameras.
Yeah, they're fun.
Yeah,
they're cool to have.
It's fun tracking individual bucks and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, as I'm hunting more public land and places I've never been, I mean, I'm more or less hunting sign, and just whatever comes in is going to be a surprise. Which that's the way Kentucky was. And man, that is so much fun. Not knowing what's there. Not knowing
anything,
because you just don't know what's going to come out.
Well, and I've been guilty in the past of relying way too heavily on trail cameras and not hunting a place.
Yep.
Because I didn't have something on camera, and there's been 2 or 3 times that I've had cameras that I didn't check, and come to find out that there were deer there. They just didn't get caught by my cell camera or whatever. And plus, if you're hunting trail cameras, talk about something unreliable. I have the worst luck with trail cameras anyway.
I do too, yeah.
So, I get 10 pictures and the battery dies, so it doesn't really give me any information.
Yeah, so. It's a lot of frustration. I mean, they can be a good tool, but man, it's just, you put up, you rely on those things. It just becomes a crutch, really.
Oh, yeah.
And,
for sure.
Get off the cameras. I'm trying not to preach to people here, but I mean, you got
to listen to Jared.
You got your bait piles that you're sitting on. I mean, you can hunt that way too. That's fine, but mix it up a little bit. Get out and hunt sign and.
Yeah, I like baiting, and I think it's a lot of fun sitting over a bait pile just because you see a lot of deer and it's different, but getting out and hunting. Looking for sign and hunting and finding that oak tree that's dropping. Once you kill one doing that, it's like, oh man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a whole different feeling to me.
My personality is, I put the work into getting the bait out there and putting it out and putting the camera out. And then it's like, I have to sit that spot.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not getting anything on camera, but I have to sit there because I have all this investment of time and money in it. So it just, it doesn't, I've never been good at doing it.
I have.
Oh, I know you have. You're like, you're the master. So.
Well, we're going to come out with a web series called Grant Lemon's Tactical Baiting. So I'm telling you, there are ways to do it.
There are tactics.
Super effective.
Yeah, I'm not going to debate that at all.
Anyway, I don't like hunting bait as well as I like going out scouting, finding sign, and hunting a buck.
Yeah, I mean, there's no judgment here. I mean, we're not judging anybody that hunts bait because we do it too.
Oh, I like it.
It's a fun way to hunt. But, I mean, if it ain't working for you, get out and do something different.
Yeah, change it up. If you're in a spot hunting over bait and you keep getting winded, you better change your tune pretty quick.
But we won't dive into that too much deeper because we don't want to. We don't want to hurt any feelings.
So what do you think Greg on the Tethered podcast will name this podcast?
I don't know. He can't say you're the worst saddle hunter ever
because
you've already killed him.
Well, so you remember that video that he made whenever he turned into a pool of Jell-O in John Eberhardt's basement?
Oh, yeah.
And he was like, just tell them scoreboard, John. Tell them scoreboard when they make fun of you or whatever he said. And John was like, dude, I don't care. Just get out of my basement. I'll say to Greg Godfrey, if you think I'm the worst saddle hunter ever, scoreboard. Because if I look at the stats, I've killed a lot more deer out of a saddle than you have, kind sir.
Mic drop.
And that's it.
That's it for today. So we'll be back here maybe in a month or so before we get ready to head to Ohio.
Yeah.
So
shoot, we need to do that.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about Ohio, but we haven't been there. We haven't scouted, but we know where they're at. We know where they live, and that's all we need to know. So we'll just slide in there and murder them. That's
One
all
of us
there is
will.
to it.
One of us will hunt there, get aggravated, and go home.
And then I'll kill the big buck.
And Jared will kill 100-inch 8-point.
Oh, no. I'm holding out for 115-inch buck this year.
All right, folks. Well, we appreciate you listening.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
We'll catch you later.